The words hit her like a slap, but the real pain came when he shoved her violently against the wall. The shock on Adanna's face was clear. This wasn't the man she thought she knew. Adanna had one dream, an unwavering ambition to marry a doctor. It wasn't just about the prestige, the white coat, or the hospital rounds. To her, being the wife of a doctor symbolized success, stability, and above all, respect. Growing up in a humble family of traders in Onitsha, Adanna had always been encouraged by her parents to work hard and make a name for herself. But she was determined that her shortcut to greatness would be marrying a doctor. When she met Dr. Emeka Ode, it felt like all her prayers had been answered. Emeka was everything she had envisioned, a tall, well-spoken, and successful doctor. He worked at one of the best hospitals in Lagos and had a prestigious reputation among his peers. Her heart skipped a beat every time he spoke about the medical cases or mentioned his affluent colleagues. Adanna felt she had hit the jackpot. Despite the growing warning signs, Adanna ignored her instincts. Emeka was also critical, complaining about the way she spoke, how she dressed, and even how she laughed. Adanna, you laugh like a market woman. Could you at least try to be refined? He would often say, giving her a look of disdain. Adanna introduces Emeka to her parents. As Adanna stepped into her parents' modest living room, her heart fluttering with excitement and a tinge of nervousness. Emeka followed closely behind, his gaze sweeping over the worn furniture and faded curtains with a hint of disdain. "Mom, Dad, this is Emeka," Adanna introduced, her voice brightening the atmosphere. "Nice to meet you," her father replied, studying Emeka's expression carefully. Adanna noticed her father's wise eyes narrowing slightly, sensing the tension. As they settled, Adanna noticed Emeka shifting in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. "Are you thirsty, my love? I can get you some water," she offered, hoping to ease the mood. "Actually, I'm really thirsty," Emeka said, his tone dismissive. Just then, Judith, Adanna's younger sister, rushed in with a glass of water. "Here you go, brother," she said, beaming. Emeka took one look at the cup, his nose crinkly in the disgust. "Can't you see the glass cup is not clean?" He scoffed. "A cup that filthy would infect one with diseases." Adanna's heart sank as she glanced at Judith, who looked crushed. "But my love, you said you were so thirsty," she said gently, trying to understand. "Judith, you see what you're doing. Why don't you use a clean glass cup, eh?" Mama Adanna chimed in, her voice laced with concern as she shot a disapproving look at younger daughter. "My dear, we are so sorry. Please forgive her. She's just a child. I will go and fetch the water for you, my son, eh?" Mama Adanna offered, rising to head to the kitchen. When she returned with a sparkling clean glass, Emeka merely waved a dismissive hand. "Don't worry, I'm no longer thirsty," he said, a hint of arrogance dripping from his words. The silence that followed was palpable. Adanna felt the weight of her parents' disappointment. Mama Adanna's face flushed with embarrassment as she retreated to her room, the door closing softly behind her. Emeka didn't seem to notice or care. His attitude had cast a shadow over what should have been a joyous introduction. The visit was brief. As they set out to leave, Adanna couldn't shake off the feeling that Emeka had registered his disrespect to her family as well. As painful as it was, she was still determined to have a doctor for a husband. As Emeka stepped outside, clearly impatient to leave, Papa Adanna gently took his daughter's hand, pulling her aside. His face was calm, but his voice carried the weight of years of wisdom. "Nwam, my daughter," he began, "this man does not respect you." I don't think he's a good choice for you. His eyes searched hers, hoping she would understand. Adanna felt her heart tightened, torn between her father's words and her own desires. She had always dreamed of marrying a doctor, and now with Emeka, a well-established doctor by her side, that dream seemed within reach. Daddy, I'm so sorry this happened, she said hastily, trying to avoid his gaze. He will come around. He's just under stress, Daddy. She wanted to believe that the Emeka she knew would change, that her father had misread the situation. Papa Adanna shook his head slightly, his expression filled with concern. Adanna, a man's heart is shown in how he treats those who love him. But Adanna wasn't ready to listen. I will talk to him, Daddy, I promise. She insisted, her voice rushed as she glanced outside to where Emeka waited. Please, please tell Mama I'm so sorry. Oh, I will call her when I get to Lagos. Without waiting for her father to respond, she hurried to meet Emeka. Her father watched as she left, his heart heavy with worry, knowing that sometimes love or the idea of it can blind even the wisest. The deeper Adanna got into the relationship, the more Emeka's true nature came to light. One evening, they attended a medical convention after party. The all-white party glittered with sophistication, filled with the country's top medical practitioners and their glamorous spouses. Adanna walked in beside Emeka, her white dress glowing under the soft lights, but deep inside, she felt out of place. The conversations around her flowed with medical jargons that she didn't understand. Discussions about breakthroughs and complex cases. And though she nodded and smiled, she was barely keeping up. Emeka, on the other hand, thrived in this environment. His colleagues gravitated towards him, their laughter and banter reflecting their shared knowledge and accomplishment. Adanna tried her best to blend in, offering polite smiles, though her discomfort gnawed at her. Then it happened. In the midst of the casual conversation, Emeka turned to his group of fellow doctors and their polished wives, a smug smile playing on his lips. Adanna once thought that a stethoscope was a cooking utensil, he said, chuckling as if it were a harmless joke. Can you believe that? My wife-to-be, ladies and gentlemen. The group erupted into laughter. It wasn't the kind of laughter that invited Adanna in. It was mocking, cruel, and dismissive. She felt the heat rush to her face as embarrassment washed over her. Her smile fluttered, but she held it, though it was brittle now, barely masking the hurt she felt. Adanna excused herself quietly, slipping away from the crowd and into the restroom. She stood before the mirror, her reflection staring back at her, elegant but out of place. Her mind raced with shame and she blinked back tears. You are tough, she whispered to herself, gripping the sink. This dream must be achieved. She remembered the poised, elegant wives of Emeka's colleagues, how they fit so effortlessly into the world she desperately wanted to belong to. See how beautiful and prestigious they looked, she told herself, willing her emotions to steady. I have to become like them. She straightened her back, fixed her makeup, and forced herself to return to the party, determined not to let the sting of humiliation crush her ambition. Even though she wanted to leave the party and Emeka altogether. But as she rejoined Emeka, the ache in her chest deepened. Adanna noticed she hadn't hung out with her friends lately and was excited for the girls' day out. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her shoes with a quiet smile. She liked them, simple, elegant, and comfortable. But when Emeka walked into the bedroom, his face twisted with displeasure. Why are you wearing those? He snapped, his tone sharp. I told you to wear the ones I picked. Adanna tried to explain softly. I just thought this looked better with the dress. But her response only seemed to ignite something darker in him. In a flash, Emeka's face contorted with fury. He grabbed her arm, jerking her towards him. Are you stupid? He spat, his voice filled with venom. Why will you reject what I suggested? Who is even looking at you? The words hit her like a slap, but the real pain came when he shoved her violently against the wall. The shock on Adanna's face was clear. This wasn't the man she thought she knew. Her mind struggled to catch up with what was happening, her heart pounding in disbelief. Emeka, she whispered, trying to make sense of his rage. But before she could say anything more, he flung her harshly onto the bed. She gasped in pain as her arm twisted beneath her, tears welling in her eyes. You better not let that repeat itself again, he sneered, his voice cold and unfeeling. Without another word, he stormed out of the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Adanna lay there, her body trembling. She gingerly crowded her aching arm, tears slipping silently down her face. The hurt wasn't just physical. She felt the weight of her shattered trust and the realization of Emeka's cruelty sinking in. She had never imagined that the man she once admired, the man she thought she loved, could treat her like this. But as the pain coursed through her body, the reality of his violence became undeniable. Adanna had a group of friends where they often hang out together to chill and talk about men, their businesses, and how life was going. Her best friend Uju had been noticing that for a while now, Adanna was slowly pulling away. She rarely joined their hangouts anymore, and when she did, she seemed distant. On a quiet afternoon, Uju finally decided to confront her friend over the phone. Babe, what's happening? We miss hanging out with you. The girls and I, Uju said, her voice a mix of concern and playfulness. Adanna, on the other hand, hesitated for a moment before replying. I'm just always so busy. With chores, I barely have time for, frivolities. Uju's playful tone shifted to offense. Frivolities, she repeated, her voice firm. Babe, I honestly don't like that term. Hanging out with your girls from high school, catching up on life, how is that frivolity? How is business, by the way? Adanna's heart sank at the mention of her business. She hadn't been to her foodstuff store in weeks. Ever since Emeka told her he didn't want his wife to be selling foodstuffs to hotels. That's for loose girls, he'd say. It stunk, but she didn't know how to explain that to Uju. Business is fine, babe, Adanna replied, her voice lacking its usual spark. Uju, sensing something deeper was wrong, pressed on, not ready to let her friend disappear. Just 1 hour, babe. I know you're a busy lady. Being a doctor's wife and all. Abi? Abeg, come out, Joe. Let me see your fine face small. The words doctor's wife coursed through Adanna like a sharp reminder of everything she was suppressing. She blinked back the tears that suddenly welled up, her chest tightening at the weight of the reality borne down on her. The expectation, the humiliations, the sacrifices, all of it threatened to spill out in a flood of emotion. To avoid breaking down on the phone, she quickly said, "Yes, I will come." Her voice was shaky, but she hoped Uju wouldn't notice. "That's great, girl. So see you then," Uju replied cheerfully, relieved. As Adanna hung up the phone, she stared at it for a moment, feeling trapped between two worlds. The vibrant, carefree person she used to be, and the shell of someone trying to meet the impossible expectation Emeka had placed on her. But she'd go out, if only for a moment, to remember what it felt like to be herself again. The restaurant by the water was serene, with the gentle breeze carrying the scent of fresh air and the sound of waves creating a calming backdrop. The girls were in high spirits, reminiscing about their younger days in Onitsha. The table was filled with delicious nkwobi and palm wine, laughter bouncing around as they swapped stories from their carefree youth. But when Adanna walked in, the energy shifted. Her presence didn't bring the usual warmth. Instead, an awkward silence briefly settled over the group. Her face, which usually had a light touch of makeup, was heavily done up. Too much foundation, too much color. Uju, always playful and quick to lift the mood, tried to bring the joy back. "Hey girl, so delighted to see you," Uju said with a wide grin, pulling Adanna to sit beside her. The others followed her lead, making light conversations, though their eyes kept darting to Adanna's face, trying to make sense of what they saw. Behind the makeup, they could see it. A faint discoloration, a bruise hidden beneath layers of concealer. No one said anything, but the concern was palpable. After some time, Uju couldn't hold back her worry. She gently pulled Adanna aside, away from the others. "Babe, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft but serious. Adanna's response came quickly, too quickly, in fact. "Why wouldn't it be?" she replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Uju frowned, reaching out to touch the bruised area beneath the makeup. "Sis, you rarely wear heavy makeup. See?" Her fingers gently brushed Adanna's cheek. Adanna flinched in pain, quickly pulling away. I fell down the stairs," she said, her voice a little too rehearsed. Emeka and I were playing hide and seek, and when he tried to catch me, I missed a step and fell. It still hurts." Uju nodded slowly, but doubt flickered in her eyes. She wanted to believe Adanna's story, but something about the way Adanna had sounded on the phone earlier, her tone, her hesitance, it didn't add up. Still, she didn't want to push too hard. "Ouch, that must have hurt so bad," Uju said, her voice laced with sympathy. "Please take care of yourself, babe. And if there's anything you need to share, you know I'm right here, always for you." Adanna forced another smile, grateful the interrogation was over. They hugged, Uju's embrace lingering just a little longer than usual, as if she was silently offering strength. Back at the table, Adanna felt a wave of relief wash over her. Without Emeka's looming presence, she could finally breathe. The laughter and conversation resumed, and for the first time in a long while, Adanna felt like herself again, enjoying the company of her friends, if only for a few hours. Adanna couldn't stop smiling as she made her way to the beach. The rush of relief she had felt the last time with her friends had been intoxicating, a rare moment where she could escape from her life with Emeka. Now, as she joined them for another hangout, she hoped to feel that same lightness again. The beach was vibrant, with each of the girls dressed in colorful Ankara beach wears that celebrated their individuality. Laughters and chatters filled the air, blending with the sound of the ocean waves crashing softly on the shore. Adanna felt good, felt free, almost. But as the sun hit her face, it seemed to expose the truth she had tried so hard to hide. A new bruise. Despite the refined concealer she had painstakingly applied, was faintly visible under her makeup. Chinwe, always quick with her sharp tongue, noticed it first. "What happened this time, Ada?" she teased, her tone light but mocking. "Fell off the bed?" The group laughed, but Uju didn't. She kept her eyes on Adanna, her concern deepening. Something was clearly wrong, and she couldn't keep quiet about it any longer. My friend Uju said, pulling Adanna aside gently, "You need to do better, babes. Marrying a doctor isn't the whole world's worth for you. I heard you haven't opened your business store in over a month now. You have to do better, girl. I'm always there for you if you need help." Adanna's heart sank as the reality of Uju's words hit her. But she wasn't ready to admit the full truth. Not yet. She offered a weak smile, trying to reassure her friend. "It's nothing serious. This was the first time Emeka ever hit me. I know it's just the stress from the hospital. So many patients, so much pressure." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they were lies. Deep down, she understood that this wasn't about Emeka's job or stress. It was about control, cruelty, and a relationship that was slowly suffocating her. Uju's eyes searched hers, sensing the dishonesty in her explanation. But she didn't push further. Instead, she placed a hand on Adanna's shoulder. "Ada, just know, I'm here. You don't have to do this alone." Adanna nodded, her smile barely holding. As they rejoined the group, she tried to shake off the heaviness in her chest, but it clung to her like the sea breeze. For now, she could pretend. She could laugh, sip her drink, and feel the sand between her toes. But as the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the ocean, she knew she couldn't run from the truth forever. Hey, UGOCHI lovers, thank you always for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tale. I'm working so hard to bring up the next one your way. So bye for now. Keep loving yourself. I love you. Mwah.